Okay, and we are live here at Out the Box TV. I'm your host, Cril. Welcome to Out the Box Talks. We have a brand new episode today. Got my co-host A-Level with me.
A-Level the Wiz. You know what it is. South Bronx finest, A-Level the Flyers. Check it out.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yo, I gotta big you up, man. Shout out to you, man. You just had a birthday, man. Happy birthday to you, man.
44th chapter. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. So we got a special guest with us today, man. Like big, really important name to hip hop. You know what I mean? Important name. And I'm just really excited. And I'm really excited to share this interview with you, A-Level, because you are the connoisseur when it comes to like just original hip-hop, my brother.
Man, I don't even consider myself a connoisseur. I'm just a real life documentarian, man.
Yes,
I lived through it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I don't have to really read books to study hip-hop, man. The book is inside me. And it will be coming soon.
So, I mean, without further ado, I know we got the man in the middle right here, man. We are so excited to have Brother Speech, the main MC, the front man of the 2 times Grammy Award winning group, Arrested Development. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here with y'all, man. Good to vibe.
Yes. So we got a lot to talk about today, man. This new album, Don't Fight Your Demons. I definitely want to talk to you about this. But for people out there that don't know, right? I feel like in my mind, everybody should know who Arrested Development is. But just for the millennials, like we were saying, A-Level, don't know, give them a brief history on who Arrested Development is.
Well, Arrested Development, we are a hip hop group, obviously. We kicked off in 1987 in Atlanta, Georgia. And our first record was in 91, really 92, somewhere in there. And won some Grammys during 93, I think it was. And have had probably 12, 13 out and, touring the entire planet and numerous times over. And we call our music life music. It's like to contradict a lot of the music that unfortunately was sort of glorifying death. And so our music was like the antithesis of that type of vibe and just basically bringing more diversity to the hip hop world. That was the goal. And that's who we are.
Wow. That's dope, man. That's dope.
Just please, if you could just discuss your humble beginnings, your rearing, your childhood, things of that nature.
My childhood was two things. First, I was born in 68, the same year Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered and assassinated. So I was born in a very turmoil-oriented time period. My mother and father got a house very, very soon before I was born. They got a house in the suburbs. We was the only black family in this suburb. I'm from Wisconsin, and the suburb was called Wauwatosa. And so I was born in this very suburban, almost like storybook-like area. And yet the racism was extremely palatable and real and in your face. So much so that back then, me and my brother, I had a brother, I'll talk about that in a minute. Me and my brother would get jumped by what was called, it was a gang, basically a white gang called the Greasers back when I was a kid. And we would get jumped by them. And then at the same time, I was raised partially in the rural South with my grandmother in a small town called Glimp, Tennessee. It's real small town, like about 100 and something, maybe somewhere in the hundreds of families there, not even thousands. And, well water, no electricity, pigs and farmland and all of this type of energy. So it was sort of two different worlds going back and forth. And then my mother and father both were activists, black activists. So they were involved in the civil rights struggle. My mom owned and still owns the largest black newspaper in Wisconsin. It's called the Milwaukee Community Journal. It's been around for like 44 years. It's the biggest black paper. Everybody in Milwaukee that reads papers knows about it. And growing up around that, it's right smack dab in the middle of the hood in Milwaukee. And so Milwaukee is one of the worst places for black people to grow up in. This is statistically what's been already said, right? So you know, like I'm a mixture. I'm looking at 3 squares in this interview right now. I'm a mixture of 3 different realities. You know what I mean? Like the rural South, one, suburb life, another, and right in the middle of the hood is the last. So it's like all 3 of those things sort of make up who you're looking at.
Wow. That's a lot, man. And you know, when you spoke about the place Milwaukee and the effect it has, like I noticed that you referenced that on the album as well, and we'll definitely get into that. A-Level, you had another question for speech?
I'd like to believe everything and everyone has a purpose.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Some of us go through life not fulfilling their purpose because they can't even identify with what purpose is. You know, and at what point in your life were you able to determine what your purpose was in life? What was it going to be?
Yeah. For me personally, I think I got that early on. I saw Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5. They used to have a cartoon when I was a kid, and every Saturday their cartoon would come on, and I would watch that. And as you could imagine, there wasn't a lot of black anything on television back then. So just seeing a black family, period, and then the amount of talent and the charisma, the dance moves, just seeing that gave me this idea that I wanted to entertain. But I didn't really know how to hone my voice back then. So it would turn out that probably about 7 years after that, my father owned a nightclub, which used to be called a disco growing up. And at this disco, I would be around all the DJs. I was 13, 12, and all the people I was hanging around was 20s, in their mid 20s, and they're spinning records. I'm around, women and the whole nightclub disco scene. And I learned how to DJ. And that was when I realized, like, okay, that whole Michael Jackson inspiration that I had, I'm going to put it into making people dance instead of making the records that make people dance. So I was the one that was spinning, and I started spinning at that nightclub at the age of 13. I was the youngest DJ in Milwaukee, and I was spinning at a nightclub. And of course, the only reason I was even allowed to be in there was because my father owned it. And it was when I realized this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I'm supposed to be a musician.
Wow. How much of an impact did your parents have on you in terms of having that entrepreneurial spirit that would then have an impact on your business matters as an artist?
Everything. I mean, so as far as how much impact, because that's a 2-part question to me. So like, they had a huge impact on who I am. I realize that more and more the older I get. And I saw entrepreneurship as something that we should do as a people. Like, control your own business, control your destiny, hire people within your, your community, and have a secluded and a secure scenario that can make sure you're making a living. My mother and father taught me that on both sides. My father was a serial entrepreneur. So, I mean, he owned things from gas stations, and this was in the 60s and early 70s when racism was more overt. Like I told you, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 68. So you're looking at him owning things like a gas station and then owning a catering business and then moving from that to this. And so I was just learning as a young kid, okay, we can control our destiny. We can do things that we are actually controlling the narrative. My mother owned a newspaper. So obviously the stories are about Black people, about the community. It's about our struggles and our victories. the things that are going on in the Black community. So I'm just, and that's funny because they didn't have like long talks with me about this per se, although we did have talks every once in a while, but it was mainly just prototype. It's like I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. This is how we're supposed to roll as a people. And then yet I would see the opposite side of that track whenever I was in the hood, and I'd be like, Milwaukee is so like segregated in a sense. It's way more than New York, for instance. It's way more than most other cities and states in the country. And so you'll see like this harsh divide and difference between how Blacks were living and how whites were living. And I would see that like the contrast was so stark, you know what I'm saying? So it was, I don't know, it taught me a lot just about, okay, we got to control our destiny or else we don't have no one coming to save us. We got to do this on our own. So yeah, I think, you know, all of those things had a lot to do with me. Then when it came to my business, I think it had a lot to do with it, but you got to remember Arrested Development's first record was in 92. So I'm trying to think exactly how old I was. I might've been 22. So I don't know how y'all were when you were 22, but a 22-year-old is a 22-year-old. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's a young dude. He's pretty much, you know, very much a young man.
Out there.
I didn't know, and I come from Milwaukee. So Milwaukee didn't have any like hip hop heroes that I knew that already got signed. This is what they did. This is how they work the business. This is how they handle everything. I didn't have that. You know what I mean? So Milwaukee, the last famous person that I knew from Milwaukee was Al Jarreau, and that was of a thoroughly different generation than me, and it wasn't hip hop, right? So, but I would later meet people from New York, and they had all of these examples of cats that got, you know, they got on from over here. They, you know, so it was a totally different world for me in Milwaukee. I didn't have any business sort of heroes to look at on how to construct business. And hip hop was still forming. It was not as formed as it is now where, you know, P. Diddy sort of got a chance to learn from Andre Harrell. And you know what I mean? And then Jay-Z got a chance to learn from, you know, Russell Simmons and P. Diddy, you know, and so like a lot of people were able to sort of build their business savvy in hip hop as the decades would go on. But when we were coming out, none of that was even a prototype yet. Andre Harrell was out, but that was it. You know what I mean? Russell Simmons was out and he was starting to become a mogul. I mean, Def Jam was still doing like when we was starting to do music, Def Jam was like, it was still a purple label, if you remember these days. I don't know how old.
Yeah, I remember
but
that.
It was before Black Label Def Jam, right? So this was early days, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's a different world.
It was Rush associated labels.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Totally different era. So, yeah, it was. So, I mean, I think my mom and dad's entrepreneurship had an effect on my business to some extent, though, because a lot of what we did in Arrested Development, because I'm the founder of Arrested Development. So when I started it, I did have this idea that this is going to be insular. Like we're going to do this on our own. So like the whole way I formed the group was from the perspective of, okay, Airly Tari, which was a member of the group, she was our stylist. She would sew clothes for us. And our clothes were very like patchy and, you know, patches on the jeans and very thrift store, you know, that type of vibe. And so she would pull that in and make sure we had clothes every night. Razadon, one of the members of the group, would be the one that would create our logo as well. And, you know, he made sure the graphics was tight and then so on and so forth. So we sort of had this, you know, insular, always insulated type of energy. And I think that came from me being raised that way with my mom and dad.
Dope.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of Arrested Development, like it's been about 27 years since the debut album, right? 3 years, 5 months, 2 days in the life. And I know a lot has changed in that span, right? Let me first just start off by saying this. I should have said this earlier. My son, who is in college, hit me up about, I think it was about last week. And he texted me and he said that he heard about this record, Everyday People. But I mean, this happened just last week, by Arrested Development. And he knows I'm a hip hop head. So he's like, Dad, I really like this song. I'm like, yeah, it came out in the 90s. That's a dope record. And as I'm looking through the blogs, because I'm always on the blogs, you know, looking for new music, I see that y'all got a new record coming out. And I got to give my son props because he brought the group's name back to the forefront of my mind. And it just was so timely because I looked and you guys had just released a single for Becoming, or I had just the single for Becoming.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to just recognize my son, you know, for just bringing that back to me and just looking at how many years have passed and how your music is actually affecting generations beyond me. You know what I'm saying? I was probably like a teenager, if not when you know, People Every Day came out and all the hit records came out. I remember my pops, who's no longer here, like really loving that record, you know. And like I'm sure A-Level, you could talk about
a lot of the elders really loved that record. It was a communal record. It brought the community together, young and old. Everyone in hip hop was connected, you know, to that, you know. And shout to Taye, by the way, that's my nephew.
Word up.
Talking about, man.
Yeah.
So it just in reference to that project, right? You know, 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days in a life that came out, you know, I want to say 27 years ago. I'm not correct on
somewhere in there. Yeah.
27 years ago. Bring us up to speed on who Arrested Development is. Like what is the group today? Who does it comprise of, and what are their roles?
Yeah, so today it's me, JJ Boogie, Farida Alim, and One Love. But the group constantly changed over the years. So like when we first started out, this is before the record deal, we were, I mean, a couple names. We had, like, we started off as, what was our first name? Maybe Secret Society, I think was our first name. Then it morphed into Disciples of a Lyrical Rebellion. Then it morphed into Arrested Development. So during all three of those amalgamations of Arrested Development, it was different members. So different people. A dude named Click was in Secret Society. There was a dude named Preacher that was in Disciples of a Lyrical Rebellion. There was a dude named, you know, Papa John. Anyway, Headliner was part of all of those because when I first got to Atlanta, I put up how I met Headliners. I put up a flyer saying I wanted to start a group. And I was a DJ, as I told you, since I was 13. So I wanted to start rhyming more. And I used to be called DJ Peach, which was Peech. And when I started rhyming, I changed it from Peach to Speech because I'm now rhyming and it just made sense to me. So once I started calling myself Speech, I was like, I need a DJ now. And Headliner was looking at the flyer. We went to the same school, the Art Institute of Atlanta. We were both going there. And he was looking at the flyer and I was like, oh, what's up, bro? You know, you checking out this flyer. I'm trying to start this group. And we started, you know, chopping it up from there. And that became the first member of my group. And then it grew from there organically. So me and Headliner used to go from club to club, you know, just doing music. But we would invite dancers and everything from painters to African drummers on stage. So the group started to be like this really big, almost like Soul to Soul. It was almost like a sound system. It was like a reggae sound system where, you know, me and Headliner were sort of the core people of what we knew was the group, and then everybody else was sort of just coming around us. We had people that we would invite the audience on stage, and from that point on, they started following us to the next gig. So it was like very organic, you know what I mean? And I guess my point is that we hadn't really formulated yet until we got a record deal. And once we got a record deal, as everybody knows, like when you get a record deal, you got to go on the road, and then that costs money. So now you got to start thinking about, well, how are we going to take 20 people on the road with us? And we can't afford that. So you start thinking about, well, who's the most, necessary for the group. And for me as the leader of the group, I had to start sort of deciding, well, who's going to be the group members that go on the road and who's going to be in the photos and stuff like that. So it sort of came about very organically.
Wow.
So yeah, and so who's in the group now?
Yeah.
I mentioned, and I'm the only original in the group right now. And even that, it's interesting because like a lot of times people from the original group join me and get back in the group. Like it's very, I don't know, the way I've run this group over the years has been very organic. Like Ishi, for instance, she's one of the original members, and she would be like, yo, I want to take, I'm good. I want to start doing solo stuff. And I'm like, it's all good. So go ahead, do your thing, and then I would find somebody to replace her on tour, and she'd go off and do stuff. And then at certain points she would say, you know what, I'm really looking to get back on the road. And then I'm like, okay, cool. So then I bring her back in, and the sister that was dancing, I'd ask her, this is Ishi. She's from the original crew. And so we would just do that. And same with Razadan and all of that. So, the way we sort of ran things and in the way I run things now, it's like, it's very organic in that sense. A lot of in and out, a lot of sort of like people sort of doing whatever they want to do. And, stuff like that. That's been a lot of the trend of this group.
And that's dope that you keep an open door like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't really feel no kind of way that if people want to pursue whatever they want to pursue. And
not at all. No, never did. Yeah, I believe in that, man. Like for me, I believe in everybody, like you said earlier about purpose. I believe everybody has to fulfill their purpose, man. Like we're only here for a short amount of time. And in that amount of time, I want everybody to feel like they're able to pursue the things that they feel they're put on this earth to do. And if it's part of Arrested Development, then great. If it's not, then great. But you got to do what you feel like you come here to do.
Word.
Yeah, wow. I mean, the terms conscious or woke, this is the thing that they use nowadays, right? Like that's the new term to call conscious. Yeah. Everything is awoke now, or he's woke. What does that mean to you?
For me personally, I mean, obviously the woke thing is a new thing. So I'll use conscious because I'm used to that. I feel like conscious is conscious of the oppression that we have been put through and the depths of it, and therefore living a life that is based on counteracting that or fighting against that. And so like in the song People Every Day, right? I talk about the nigga and the African, right? And there's these two characters in the song. And basically the nigga is, the way I saw the song, and this is how I still see it, the nigga is a brother or a sister that's oppressed. But so is the African. They're oppressed. The difference between the two is that the nigga wallows in that oppression, and the African fights against that oppression. Neither of them are born that way, and they both can change. So the nigga doesn't stay a nigga if he doesn't want to. It's a mentality. But once they decide to fight against it, they become what I term in that song an African. So you'll see in the song that I keep consistency as to when I'm calling somebody a nigga or when I'm calling them an African. I never like switch them up just sort of haphazardly. So I feel that same way now. Like consciousness to me is when you have made a decision to evolve, or maybe you were always that way. Maybe your parents raised you that way. But if you weren't raised that way, once you become conscious, you evolve to a place where similar like how that chart of evolution is, where you got the sort of ape looking, person, and then they start standing upright and then they start walking and like the human being. I look at consciousness like that, but it's mentally that you're no longer crawling anymore. You're walking now. You're standing tall and you're doing what you got to do. Not saying you're not making mistakes and you're perfect, because none of us are that, but just, okay, I made a decision. I'm conscious. I think of Malcolm X as the perfect example of consciousness to me.
Wow. I mean, would you consider yourself as a conscious artist?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. But see, it's funny because to me, I also consider Stevie Wonder a conscious artist. So it's like, to me, it's just artists that recognize the role that they play. They recognize how influential music is, and therefore they use it appropriately in that light. Like Earth, Wind, and Fire, conscious. You know what I mean? So like, to me, that's what I consider conscious. But there's mixtures. There's some people that do show some consciousness, and then other times they choose for whatever reason not to. For me, I strive to like just really truly be conscious, and not as a front, but as a lifestyle. And I talk about that a lot, on this new record too, like songs like Moses, for instance,
right,
where I talk about, it's what I actually do. You know what I'm saying? It's not just like a thing I'm trying to do it's not like a gimmick to try to get into the industry and make records and make money. That's not what this is. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a real thing. It's a lifestyle.
Right. I mean, you can genuinely see that that's who you are, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
no doubt about it. Yeah.
But what's funny about these terms, right? And I know you can relate to that, is that back in the days when we was listening to hip hop, man, hip hop was just so much younger. There weren't as many terms.
I agree.
Terminologies. Oh, this person is conscious.
Yeah.
Public Enemy, Arrested Development, X Clan. That was considered in. That was dope. That was mainstream.
Yeah.
But these terms can either work for us, and I love how your approach and you're embracing the term. It can work for us or against us, especially if we're trying to make some sort of substantial change within the culture and the community.
Yeah.
Terms like hater, or what I like to call like sentinel devices, right?
Yeah.
They're designed to eliminate creative and constructive criticism for the challenges of the quality of the music and the state of our culture. And believe it or not, there are and have been a great deal of talented brothers such as yourself that have been somewhat diminished from the mainstream surface because they challenge the misogynistic, materialistic gangster thread that has become the fabric of today's hip hop culture. You yourself could have easily chosen to assume a complacent position and either say nothing or just go along with it and say, hey, this is what they're doing nowadays, and just go ahead. But I noticed you mentioned on your YouTube channel, by the way, anyone that is watching this right now, I recommend you subscribe to Brother Speech's channel. Plenty of very fruitful things that you can get to grow. You said you mentioned on the YouTube channel, by the way, that because you practice self-accountability.
Yeah.
Self-accountability with other people, with our people, that certain folks within the hip-hop conscious community won't even work with you on your records now.
Yeah.
Because you practice that, and most people don't like to get into that. What motivates you to keep pushing the envelope for keeping the truth alive in people's eyes?
Well, first of all, bro, that's a great question. For me, bro, it's like, I don't think I could live with myself if I didn't be true to myself. So to me, self-determination and accountability is needed in order for us to heal. So we've had a huge gash or a huge injury from the oppression and the terrorism that we have sustained as a people. We know that. Everybody that's Black knows that. They feel it on a daily basis. But now we've got to heal, or else we don't get anywhere. So to me, in order to heal, you have to be accountable for that healing. You have to, first of all, recognize that there's a gash, and then you yourself have to be able to do something to start the healing process. But if you don't even acknowledge that something's wrong, then you're never going to heal. And in fact, you only go the opposite direction. And that's true with any sickness or anything else. You got to acknowledge what's going on. And so a lot of times in hip hop music, we use the tool to expose the ills of other people, like white people or whatever. And I think that that's productive and right, because there's ills that they have enacted upon us and upon the world too. But to stop at that doesn't cure anything. Because if you just recognize one gash but not the other gash is getting gangrene, basically. You know what I mean? So you got to be able to recognize the things that are going against us and working against us in order to move forward. And so I feel like so many artists right now, like you said, it's in this age of the haters. So many artists are afraid. And I'm not going to call them cowards, but it is cowardice at the end of the day when a grown man or woman, but I'm going to focus on the dudes, a grown man cannot say in his own mind, look, this is just what I see. I'm not dissing you. I'm not wanting to disassociate with you, but this is what I see about our culture that is crushing us from within. And to me, you can't just go along with the flow when you see that. You can't unsee it. I see it. And it's obvious. It's not like it's covert. It's overt. It's right there in front of our face. And what I mean by that is so much of the material that we are digesting as a hip hop loving community, especially from the mainstream, I'm really talking about the mainstream, is so limited in its levels of, energy and its content, diversity, all of that is so limited that it's obvious that we are missing the voice of our people, really, because that's not what we're all on. Some people are on that. And it's funny because I would never talk about the lower energy hip hop if it was more balanced. The reason I tend to call it out so much is because it isn't balanced.
Preach.
If it was balanced, I actually could appreciate it. Like, I get that. And then there's time for that. Like in the Bible, there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that says there's a time for everything under the sun. I agree with that statement. There is a time for some low level, like straight up ratchet stuff. I really do. And at the same time, if that's all I'm getting though, like 90% of everything that's coming at me is that's not cool. That's when I speak out. It's not because I am sort of just like a tight dude or like a prude that doesn't understand that there's different energies and they're all useful for different things in this world. I do. And I respect that. And so I guess a lot of other hip hop artists, especially in the conscious world, we've become so sparse in the scene as far as making a good living, really having hit records, having a real presence in the scene, that they are scared to speak up, it seems like, to say something about it at risk of not being cool, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
and basically being out of the crowd again and being ostracized
and being pacified by success, man.
There you go. You're being pacified by success. So you've got that money now and you don't want to lose it. So if I got to shut up, I'm going to shut up. If I got to, just talk about only the man out here that's doing wrong to us, but not talk about us, then I'm going to do that because I want to keep this money coming in. And hip hop has gotten this very mogul philosophy about it. And I understand where it comes from because we never made money as a people in this industry, not compared to the people that were signing the checks. So I get that we would think that the right move is to make that money and make that the focus. But the truth is, when you make money the focus, it also takes out integrity, dignity, all the other things that are actually, in truth and in the long run, way more important than the money, because you're going to lose and get money and lose and get money again. But dignity and things like that, that's your guiding principles. That's the things that move us forward as a people and even as an individual is way more important than the money. Wow. So that's what happens, unfortunately, is people get real complacent real quick. And I ain't raising no about that because I want to stay in the end, whatever that is. You know what I mean?
Wow. It's beautiful that you could speak on that because it comes across authentic because I know you've lived it, right?
Very much.
You've been through the stages of being on top to being down and then building yourself back up again. And you actually, I think you allude to it on the new project as well.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about this project because I know there's a producer involved in it that I don't think you guys have worked with him before. His name is Configure, right? And I'm familiar with him because of the record that he put out with Jahi earlier this year, which is really a dope record. Talk to me about Configure. How did you get connected with him and his role and involvement in this new album, Don't Fight Your Demons?
So that's a great question. I didn't know Configure and I never heard his music, but I'm friends with Jahi. So Jahi's from Public Enemy, from Public Radio, Enemy Radio. So, and even before he was part of that, I just knew him as a solo artist. He would open up for Arrested Development and ask me, yo, can I come to this country or that city? And can I open up? And I always would be like, yeah, we'll work it out. Let's make that happen. And he's a lover of hip hop, just a great dude. So I'm a fan or a friend and fan of Jahi. So then Jahi puts out this record, Forward Future, something like that.
Yeah.
Forward. And that's the record you're referring to. So it said Jahi and Configure. And every time he releases something, I'm checking it out. He's my dude. So I checked it out and I was like, yo, this is hot. I love the soundscapes of this. It brings me back to me, the purity of hip hop. Great soundscapes, great lyrics. Every song is about something, like it ain't really too pre or anything, but it's like some stuff that a 50-year-old man, 51 years old, could understand and relate to, and was like, yo, this is great. So I was working out with my trainer and my sister-in-law, and I was playing the record while we were working out. And I sent him, I recorded that and I sent it to Jahi and I said, yo, you got us over here rocking. He sent that to Configure. Configure then hit me up on either Twitter or some social media thing and was like, yo, respect. I'm glad you like our stuff. And I said, I do. And we started building on, why don't we try to do a song together? Because I love the Jahi project with him. And that's how it started. And then Configure and he lives in London. So Configure started sending tracks and I just started vibing along with what he was sending. And I was already making tracks for an Arrested Development record. And it started from there. It just started to form. It was like, you know what? I like this track. That's hot. And what I liked about Configure was that his sensibility about hip hop was very similar to mine. Like the era that we're probably most influenced by was that boom bap era. And, we liked the trap sound, but it was like not really our forte. It's not it's not sort of our area of genius in a sense. So it was like, okay, let's rock with what we really like. And that was like a given. So we weren't trying to sound like, whoever nowadays, like we weren't trying to sound like somebody today. We were trying to just do what we do. And that felt good. So the chemistry was real easy. We just started, nowadays technologically, you start passing around tracks to each other. And, I'm a producer too. So I'm really crazy with Pro Tools. And so I'm able to edit and stuff. And I'm able to arrange the song. And so when he would send me a track, sometimes it'd be like a minute and a half long. And I would put it in a Pro Tools session and make it, 4 or 5 minutes or whatever. Wow. And start developing a song to it and then send that to him. Then he would then, he had the multi-track scenario in his studio. He would then, pattern the song after whatever arrangements I did. And it was just like going back and forth. And it was just a real good energy. And I'm really grateful for that dude. Cause I don't know. I think we struck a nerve with this record. Like he did 7 songs on this record. And to some extent, those records were sort of the heart and soul of this album. Wow. And so I'm really grateful, that we got a chance to connect. And I'm grateful he did that project with Jahi because I wouldn't have probably heard of him.
Wow. I didn't know that that's how you got in contact. So that means that his production, like that he contributed, that was like not too long ago.
No, we started all of that like during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think I forget the month Jahi's record came out, but I'm going to say maybe March or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So if it came out in March, then I probably, got to know who he was by April. And by then the pandemic was pretty much widespread and no touring, no money being made in that way. So I was really like confined to the house. And that was actually a blessing in the sense of creativity because I'm just locked in the studio every day. And same with him. And, you know, he's 5 or 6 hours ahead of me because I'm in Atlanta. He's in London. So we're just bouncing stuff back and forth and just really like focusing in. And then, of course, I would bring group members like One Love onto the record and stuff like that. One Love's one of the members of AD now. So, you know, it was cool. It was a real good energy.
Dope. Now, I have to say, when I heard the album title, Don't Fight Your Demons, I was like, isn't that the whole objective? Like to fight your demons? I was like, isn't it, you know, the objective to face it head on and like try to get it out your way, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like there was a deeper meaning behind that. Can you break down what Don't Fight Your Demons really means?
Yeah, so like I'm with you. Like most of my life, I've been in this mode of like, yo, fight them demons. You know what I'm saying? I might have even said it in previous records. Fight them demons, you know? And what I learned was that in life, there's certain, you know, thorns in your flesh or demons in your life that you're not able to ward them off for the long haul. So like in the Bible, there's this verse or parable that Jesus talks about. And one of them is that there's this man who had 7 demons in him. And basically he kicked the demons out of him. But because his house or his shell of his body was empty, later on, the demons came back and brought even more demons with them and kept residing inside of this man. So what I've learned about some things, like some demons, you can ward them off and they're gone forever. But there's some things in every one of our lives that ain't leaving easily. And that's what this title is about. It's about this personal journey of trying to evolve. But there's these demons that keep showing up. And instead of fighting them now, invite them in and let's have a talk because you're here for some reason. You keep coming back to me for some reason. And now I need to understand what your purpose has. What purpose have you served in my life? Because demons, we look at them as negative and they are negative, but they're trying to replace something needed that we do need in our life. And we're choosing the demons as a false representation of that.
Wow.
And so you get to know these demons, get to know how they're serving you because you're entertaining them more than you care to believe. And the fact that you're entertaining them means that there's something that they're serving you. And now you got to understand what that is. And then you could kick them out and replace it with something that's real and wholesome and, you know, nutritious or whatever you want to call it for your soul and your spirit. But that's what this record's about. And to me, I mean, I go real personal on this record. Like there's a lot of stuff I share in this record. If you dig deep and just listen to it on almost every song, I'm sharing tons of insecurities, tons of things that are these demons that I'm tackling. You know what I mean? So Don't Fight Your Demons comes from that whole little reality, that revelation I had.
You know, speaking of insecurities and stuff you've dealt with, I gotta go to Moses, right? The track Moses, where you have a line where you say, I asked Jesus, can he save me? I felt myself drowning in these ladies, breaking marital bonds for quick relations. Took my wife on the road to nip temptations. I am no longer a rolling stone.
Wow.
So when I heard that line, I said I could only imagine that, you know, you didn't tell your wife that was the purpose you took her on the road or took her on tour. But I'm just curious to know, like, well, this is a 2-part question. When did she know this, that was the reason? And also, when did you come to that full realization that infidelity had to stop?
That's a great question. Honestly, it was when my spiritual journey was going to the next level. I realized that I didn't know how to be faithful to the woman that I had just married. Like my father didn't know how to be faithful to my mother. My grandfather, my father's father, didn't know how to be grateful to my grandmother, faithful. And so I was continuing a cycle.
Wow.
That I didn't even know how to break because I hadn't seen any examples of that cycle being broken. And so when I started going on a more of a spiritual journey in my life, I realized that not only do I need to break this cycle, but in order to break this cycle, I got to come out into the light as far as this dark thing that I'm hiding. Because, you know, being a musician, right, you're touring a lot. And my wife wasn't with me initially. So I'm going to London. I'm going to Paris. I'm going to this country, that state. And I got a lot of time on my hands. And I have a lot of history with different women that I would hook up with on the road, that when I got, it's like Drake said this on one of his tunes on his Dark Demo Lanes or whatever one of his new mixtapes was. Basically, he would ask his, you know, he'd look at his phone to try to see what girls he could hook up with when he gets to a certain city. That's like commonplace for a lot of artists. And that was commonplace for me. So I realized that I was stuck in a pattern. And that even though now I've married this Black woman, I'm still living the same pattern that I was before I was married. So I did tell her, I told her, you know, that I had been unfaithful, and we had a great discussion about if she was going to forgive me of that. And if she was, what would I do to help gain the trust that I had just smashed up in our relationship? And one of the things that I wanted to do at first, I took some of my guys with me on tour to be my roommate. Now I'm a grown man, but I had a roommate just so that, and this dude was to hold me accountable. I talked about it just a second ago. Like, his role was to hold me accountable. Now I'm tempted just like most men are, you know what I mean? So like after the show, the ease of being able to get various things that I would want would be easy, but I had my dude with me, and if I brought anybody back, he would know. So it was just one of those things. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm going to teach my wife how to do road management and get her into this so she can come on the road with me. Wow. And that changed everything. Like, it was beautiful because, number one, obviously I wasn't going to bring anybody to my wife, you know, and so that helped nip that. And then it also gave us more trust. Like, she could see how I was maneuvering on the road. She was seeing it now. It's like, so the trust started to build. And me and my queen, we've been together 30 years.
Wow.
So that's because of that decision I made back then. If I wouldn't have made that decision, we would have been done 20 odd years ago. But I made that decision back then. So that's what I was saying in the lyrics of Moses.
Wow.
Now, your spiritual journey, did that all lead you to Christ?
It did.
I knew something. I knew something was there, brother.
Yeah.
I picked that up. Yep. And I know you were mentioning it somewhere on your YouTube channel. You mentioned how you got saved.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that journey and what led you to that process? I mean, Christianity, for the most part, in terms of our history as Blacks in this country, is not really looked upon in a great light because, it's a white man's religion, and you know, the Bibles, and enslave us and things of that nature. So it's interesting for a guy like yourself within the conscious community, you know, to choose that route. Can you just explain that?
No doubt, man. I appreciate the question. So, to be honest, I was definitely one of those people that you just described. Like, so I knew about Christianity my whole life. Like most Black people, somebody in your family was Christian, or a lot of people were, you know what I'm saying? Like, my grandmother was, who is one of the most influential people in my life. My mother was. So whether it was going to church with my mom or my grandmother, I was always raised around it. But as soon as I got old enough to like sort of do my own thing, I did. And I was out. I was like, I'm good. And so then I was studying Europe. I was studying, you know, Nation of Islam. I was studying Shrine of the Black Madonna, which is like a movement that's in Detroit and Atlanta, certain places. And I was doing a lot of other things that I was very interested in. Christianity was the last thing on my mind. And a sister, I explained it in my book. I have a book called What is Success? And there's a sister named Nisha that auditioned for me for a European tour. She was from a church. I could care less. I just wanted to sing her. And so she auditioned. She was a beast on the vocals. I hired her. we started to tour together. Now she's sharing her faith, right? So this is a thing that Christianity talks about a lot. And I'm like, me and my queen were like, we're good. Trust, we're good. So I felt Christianity was powerless. It was weak. And I wanted nothing to do with it. And I would tell her straight to her face about that. And then she invited us to a Bible study, basically. And it was just dudes in the room. And it was in this very room that I'm sitting in right now. They came to my house. And I didn't know them. They were strangers to me. And we just started opening up the Bible. I had tons of questions because I'm a studious kind of guy. Like, I like reading. I like learning. So I had questions about the Bible. Many of them were sort of, side-eyed because I had a lot of, preconceived thoughts about the Bible. And what I realized over time in studying those scriptures with various people was that a lot of my side-eyedness was less about the Bible and it was more about how I see people living the Bible or not living it. Wow. So I realized that a lot of my issues was with people that were claiming to be Christians that were living lives that totally appalled me. And that's still to this day. So like a lot of what I see in the media that claim to be evangelistic or evangelicals or Christians, and a lot of what I see even on TV, it does not impress me very much. So I'm still, even to this day, even though I'm a Christian, I'm not a religious dude. Like I'm actually the type of dude that really gets into the depths of it. Like I really want the real meat, not all the frills and all of that. That's just for me. My wife likes gospel music a lot. Like she rocks the Kanye West choir CD. Her and my daughter do like all the time. And me, on the other hand, I don't even really like gospel music. So, but anyway, long story short, I was converted to Jesus that I see in the Bible, not white-faced Jesus on the stained glass windows, none of this stuff. The Jesus that I see in the Bible, and I read the Bible constantly. So I'm pretty knowledgeable about that book. So that's what I'm convicted about. And yeah, I became a Christian in 1996.
Wow. One thing I gotta say about you, even though you're a Christian, like you have never like lost your roots. Like you always talk about, like you got a song about Ghana on the album, and I've seen you in interviews talking about standing on the shoulders of the ancestors.
No doubt.
You still are connected to the continent and to the history of our people. Our rich history. So I just want to definitely recognize that about you. Like you're definitely not the typical Christian that we tend to hear about. Like you definitely give a lot of recognition to the continent, and you're in it. You know what I mean? You're in the struggle of our people, and you continue to speak about that. Yeah,
no doubt. And see, I've been in it for long enough to know and study about it to know that a lot of the most relentless and brave freedom fighters also were believers, whether it was Harriet Tubman, whether it was Marcus Garvey, Nat Turner, and numerous other. I mean, obviously Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., so many others, whether they were abolitionists, whether they were, you name it, but like staunch freedom fighters, still believers. So, I mean, I know that there is a history of that. But in this day and age, it's less known to many people, but it hasn't been escaped on me. So I don't see the clash between the two. Like I see it as, of course, God wants us to be free. That's how I see it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, myself, I've been saved for 11 years now.
Word up. Congrats.
Thank you. I mean, and for me, it was the same thing. If you really read the Bible and you read it from an intelligible standpoint, none of it's going to really make sense to you, in terms to this world wise. I had to come into it from a place of experience.
Yeah.
And the places that I met Jesus was when places of things that I would never even meant to find him in. I met him in a wedding that my friend invited me to, and there was a spirit. I followed in a man named Bobby Lewis that he went back to New York, and I was there the entire time. And that spirit was a spirit of love.
There you go.
If you don't understand anything else about Christ, if you don't understand that, that's what he is.
I agree with that.
100%. And how you show love to people and how you care about people.
Yep.
God is a God of relationship, and he desires relationship. And that's the reason why he gave his son to us, to show us he wants relationship. So like what you was just saying, you know, religion and everything else, you know, that's really not what, you know, is heavenly or gets you into heaven. What gets you in is your relationship and what you spend your time in the word in those quiet time moments, you know, by yourself.
I agree.
Where the Holy Spirit can really be seen.
I thoroughly agree with that. Thoroughly agree. In fact, like the scriptures talk about, like for believers of Christ, the scriptures talk about do your prayers in a closet. You know, there's a story that Jesus says, like, don't do your prayers in front of everybody so everybody could be like, oh, he's so spiritual. Wow, look at him. Woo, woo. It's more so, and the symbolism is, look, do it to where it's a relationship between you and God. And that way, you're not doing it for bells and whistles and praise. You're doing it because you really believe that he's right here and that he is guiding not only your life, but the entire universe and everything within it. He's part of guiding that, or at least allowing it to happen. So it's either he's doing it or allowing it, one or the other. And he is someone that we should understand and praise and so on and so forth. So like, yeah, I agree with what you just said. That's the key. That's the key to it. A true relationship.
Yep.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about the album artwork for Don't Fight Your Demons. It's a pretty melanated sister on the cover.
Yeah.
She has natural hair. She has flowers in her hair. There's a cowrie shell necklace, or like a pendant, a cowrie shell pendant. And her hands are like in this kind of open gesture. Explain the significance of the artwork. It's pretty intriguing when you look at it, but I feel like there's a meaning to it as well. Like, can you talk about, you know, the meaning?
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny. Like, I had a few different cover ideas for this record, and I run a site on IG called Black Existence. And people should go on IG. It's a great melanated site. You'll love it. And the whole concept is the African diaspora is diverse and beautiful, and it's worldwide. And we're not just here in the United States. And a lot of people understand that, but a lot of people don't. A lot of Black people don't really understand just how big we are, and that the world is mainly colored. And we are everywhere. So I wanted to create a site that inspired us to think big instead of just think, like, if you happen to be trapped in your hood because of poverty or whatever, that you could get on Black Existence and you're traveling everywhere. So anyway, I say that to say I started that for that reason. During that journey of doing that Black Existence site, there has been artists that I respect. Like, wow, look at this dude's art. Or look at this sister's art. And there's a brother that goes by the name of Fourth Finger who I follow. And he had certain art that I was like, man, this would be amazing. So I talked to him and I said, yo, would you, I'm Speech from Arrested Development. I'll run this site, Black Existence, that you've been on numerous times. Would you be cool with allowing me to use that very picture that we're talking about as the cover of Arrested Development's record? And he wrote me back and he's like, yo, I charge this, that, and the third. And I said, look, I ain't got no budget. I'm gonna be real with you. I have no budget. And that's like that's like a death sentence for a lot of artists. And I get it, because a lot of artists are like, man, I get used all the time. Everybody wants me to do art, but they want it for free. And I'm like, I don't want to be that dude, but the truth is I don't have a budget. So it's an independent record. It's on my own label, and I ain't touring, and it's real. So like, but I wanted to at least try. And I told him just like that. And he first said, nah, I'm good, dude. And I said, it's all good. I appreciate it. And it's all good. And then he wrote me back on his own. And he's like, you know what? I thought about it. Let's just go on and do this. And I said, great. So we made a deal. I told him I'd give him credit and all of that. And man, it's been incredible. Like, so I put Arrested Development on there, Don't Fight Your Demons, and the rest is him. And it's a picture of this beautiful, gorgeous Black queen, and it just fit to me. It fit and to me, the hands, the way she's like positioned her hands and the way he shot that, I don't know. To me, it's like a mixture of something a little demented and something beautiful. And to me, it's a mixture of that. And I love that. I love the energy it gives me. It sort of throws me off. It's not just totally gorgeous. You're not just looking at it like, ooh, look at how gorgeous she is. To me, at least, you're looking at it like, what's that about? It's almost like that woman in Get Out, that maid woman who was like, no. That one. It's like this mixture of pretty, but it's like, oh, something's a little, it's interesting. It's an interesting look that he captured in that picture. And that's what I loved about I wanted the cover to represent that.
Wow. Thank you for breaking that down.
I noticed that there is a video for almost nearly every track on the album. Is there any particular reason for that?
Honestly, I've always felt like from the first Arrested Development record that most of the time people don't get like what we're doing if they don't see a visual with it. I don't know why, but it's like either we're coming from somewhere a little off center or something that they need the visual in order to like complete, like, oh, okay, this is cool. I don't know what it is, but even from Tennessee, when we dropped Tennessee, before we dropped the video to Tennessee back in the 90s, a lot of hip hop heads didn't even consider it hip hop. And they were just confused. Like, okay, he's sort of rhyming, but he's, it's melodic and he's singing. And then what is this? And then there's this singing chorus. I mean, singing solo at the tail end of the song. Usually if there is a singing solo, it's in an R&B song. And second of all, it would maybe be in the bridge of the song, not at the end of the song. It was just totally threw people off. And I think the visuals helped solidify what we're about. So I've always believed in, at least the music that I released with Arrested Development or even as a solo artist, that the visuals might help you get it better. Wow. So that's been my experience.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, they work. The videos work, man. I mean, it's dope. I mean, this is like an experience like none other that I've ever experienced, with albums. Normally with the albums, it's an audible experience and then you see the video later on.
Right.
Now you hear it's just one package and you're just getting both, and it's just like hitting you like boom,
yeah.
right where you need to be hit. And
I appreciate that.
Right now, the window is wide open for this kind of content, more wider than it's ever been.
Yeah, I feel that way too.
Is there hope for hip hop to redeem control of itself?
Definitely. There's always hope. I personally feel like, I'm really hoping, like when Tribe came out with their Thank You, We'll Take It From Here record, I forget exactly, Thank You for Your Service, something like that. When they came out with that record and I saw the We the People joint take off, I was really encouraged because to me, that's an example of sort of that golden era hip hop being able to capture the imaginations of not only us as people that remember that era, but some young people too. And I was excited about that. And I've always waited for more examples of that. And so to me, I feel like if we could just get more and more examples of that, then the younger folks like your nephew and the people you mentioned tonight could have a chance to recognize that, oh, okay, hip hop didn't start with Lil Wayne. And I like Lil Wayne. That's not a diss. I love Lil Wayne, but I'm just saying it didn't start there. It actually was something going on before that, and it didn't sound anything like that. So I would want more young people, and I see it at our shows too, to get hip to the fact that, like you said earlier in the interview, hip hop is diverse. And there was a time when X-Clan, Tribe, De La, Brand Nubians, Poor Righteous Teachers, Arrested Development, PE,
all mainstream,
Paris, mainstream acts, not underground. Because I think that's one of the things a lot of the young tell me all the time. Well, yeah, there'll be consciousness, but it's always been underground. It's like, no. That's from your experience. It has. That's not actually a true statement. It has been mainstream and underground from day one in hip hop, where, you know, BDP had worldwide, like you said, worldwide.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because me and Cril go back and forth about this all the time, right? You know, about there's hope. No, there's not, hip hop is dead. It's still happening. It's just like, you don't get it. From my experience, there was no lines. There wasn't no like, oh, it's only underground. The real stuff is only happening underground. Underground was the mainstream.
Yeah, exactly.
This is when the community, we reserved the right. Like, that's why Vanilla Ice was whack.
Yeah, exactly.
MC Hammer was whack. They were not. They didn't. Not to say they were whack, but they didn't represent the true essence of the culture, because the people still had control of it before the corporations came in and we just let it go. You know.
See, what's funny? I agree with you, because like if you remember, and it seems like you do, MC Hammer was dissed for doing a Popeyes commercial. He was popping, I think it was chicken or something, like little nuggets of chicken in his mouth. And nowadays that would be a win. Like, people getting endorsed by whatever, Sprite or Popeyes chicken or McDonald's, you know, like right now, I think it's Travis Scott has like some McDonald's toys going on, you know. Back in the 80s, early 90s, that was considered like, yo, you're selling out the music. So I'm not judging the people that's doing it now. I'm just saying that's how different the culture was and how controlled it was by the hip hop community. Like, the actual purveyors of hip hop and the MCs and the DJs and the breakdancers, we was talking about what we would, you know, lift up and allow and what we weren't going to like allow. And you're right, corporations started to take it over, and it totally changed the entire, you know, culture of hip hop music. So it's funny, because I've turned down, like back in the 90s, I turned down $1 million deal with Coca-Cola, $1 million. And I did it out of love for hip hop, not to know that in about 10 years from then, that's going to be looked at as one of the stupidest moves that a mogul could ever make. Like, anybody that turns out $1 million deal, you know, Coca-Cola, you're crazy. Like, that would become the business model in 10 years later, when corporations and the whole mogul mindset became the primary mindset of hip hop. It's so surreal when you look back at like how much things have changed.
And hip hop became the total opposite of what it said would not become. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly right.
Rap is not pop. Right. Rap is pop now.
Yeah, you know? Exactly right.
And,
yeah, exactly.
And which brings me to my next question: the nigga factory.
Yeah.
If people haven't seen this, you need to see this. It's on YouTube. You can go on Brother Speech's channel, and this is probably the greatest piece of work I've ever seen.
Well, thank you.
I think you kind of beat me to the punch, man, because you know, I've been talking about this since '95 when I really started to see this game like transition significantly.
Yeah, me too.
And I was like, you know, what's happening here? And for someone to put it in that kind of perspective, I mean, down to the cinematography of it, like the kudos to the guy that you work with, you know, for that, you know, in addition to what you're saying and then visually it all happening, it really puts things together, you know, for what it is that we're speaking about here. And I just wanted to ask you, what was your motivation for starting that?
Well, literally, I've been seeing that from pretty much the very beginning. I've been seeing that we've been hoodwinked as a people. Like, I know that we're really kings and queens, like, and not literally like we're ruling over somebody, kings and queens, but we are from royalty. We are from a dignified, earth conscious, life conscious, spirit conscious people. That is just who we're from. And yet you'd be hard pressed to find that energy a lot in our present day culture. So like a lot of our present day culture sort of unfortunately has morphed into this idea that Black culture is really like how ratchet you are, or like, I don't know if y'all say it, but in my household we'll say like, oh, she really Black, or like, oh yeah, he real Black. And what that means is that they're acting more what we've now become culturally accustomed to as more whatever, ghetto, more ratchet. It's like these things have been flipped upside down. And I've seen this sort of conversion of what we're supposed to now be if we want to be really down. And it's totally changed from what we actually were before. Like marriages, even during slavery, were higher in percentages than what they are now. Family values. And I'm not talking about being like straight and narrow to where you have no sense of, like the streets or vibes or anything like that. I'm just saying like value systems was more intact during the most harshest of racial times for us than it is now. So we have been morphing slowly but surely over the years. And it's for numerous reasons. And the nigga factory means just that. It's like this idea of us not being kings and queens, but being niggas has been literally manufactured on a conveyor belt in entertainment and education for centuries, but in particular since media became so huge on radio and television and now in the music, it's just continuing on. And we are morphing without understanding that this has been deliberate against us in order to basically take us out of the playing field of the world's intellectual properties, the world's natural resources, the world's fight for who's going to control what. We're just being slightly moved out of the way, and we're just becoming mere entertainment for the world and nothing more. And I know there's exceptions. I'm not saying that there's not Black scientists and Black excellence. I know there is. But in general, I'm just saying like this is a bigger picture thing I'm sort of talking about. And so the nigga factory breaks that down and talks about where is this coming from? Where is this idea that Black men would talk about our women as bitches, hoes, tricks, chicken heads, like so consistently and so constantly? I know that there's always going to be that slice of a population that's into that. But it has become so common that even women are some of the biggest purchasers and fans of some of this music, that they themselves as well have just like, well, they've sort of been beaten into submission with this whole idea. So that's what it's talking about. And it goes into a lot of depth, as you know. And yeah, I'm proud of that. So I came up with that concept quite a long time ago. And I actually put it on paper for a production company to do. And they was fired up about it, a real high-end production company. And I was surprised. I was like, wow, this concept, they're willing to mess with this. So we started going into production. And I would be going to meetings. We're writing down a lot of stuff on chalkboards and, all these ideas in their corporate offices. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And then as we kept on working on it, they kept changing it and changing it and changing it. And before I knew it, it was nothing like what I initially said. So then I had to go independent again. Sort of back to what I was talking about before with insulated and just like self-determination, put my own money into it, totally scrapped working with them. I love them as people. They're cool people, but they totally changed the entire concept to have no teeth, no punch. And it sort of became this sort of like fun, sort of silly show. And I was like, nah, I can't do that. So we never released it. And they felt some kind of way because we had spent all of these months, but I didn't know they were going to morph it. I'm thinking the initial idea I came up with was what we was going to do. They tried to change it to make it palatable and to make it mainstream. And by doing that, they took the heart and soul out of the whole project. So I ended up having to do it myself. It turned out dope as ever. I love it, proud of it. Me and a visionary here in Atlanta named Jason Orr, he did one of the most prolific parties Atlanta knows. It's called Funk Jazz Cafe, and it's had some of the biggest artists ever perform at this party here. It's world renowned. It's really, really popular. Jason Orr and I worked on, well, I came up with the concept, and he is a director, and he did all of the fancy stuff to it that you can see, and him and his crew, and I love it, man. I'm really proud of what we did. And yeah.
That's dope. When is part 3 coming out?
That's a great question, man. So long story short, I finished part 3 last year, like probably December. And so I sent it to Jason. Him and his crew was working on it. And then COVID hit, even before that, various things were happening that I explain this on my YouTube channel. And this is where it gets into some pretty conspiracy reality type stuff that I believe are very real, but people would probably call it conspiracy things because things were happening to his computer. Things were happening to my computer. Long story short, it's probably the most powerful episode that I've done. And it got sabotaged numerous times. And then COVID hit. And I still haven't been able to release it. So, you know, part of it's in the tank. And then part of it is being reevaluated. You know, I'm having to reevaluate it, me and Jason, because basically since I first finished it, so much has happened. From George Floyd to Breonna Taylor to, I mean, you name it. And some of those things have really taken on such a huge momentum that to not include that in part 3, the last final episode of Nigga Factor, I just felt made no sense. And Jason felt the same way. So I think we're sitting on it, wait for COVID to sort of do what it's going to do. And then we're going to reattach it. And I don't know what's going to happen from today to then, but we're trying to make sure it's as up to date as possible. And so that's what I'm working on.
Wow. Yeah, you've been telling me about this show. A-Level's been plugged in, man.
Sorry, man.
I want to take it back to the project again. On the track Amazing, I feel like at the end of the track you say you kind of give recognition to the original members. You know, which I thought was really dope. You know, it's like still fam, you know.
Always.
Yeah, like bring us up to speed. Like I mean, I know you guys had y'all challenges in the past, but where are you all now? Is it safe to say that the relationship is generally better?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I really think our relationship is really great considering everything that we have been through. And, you know, I think literally everybody in the group has had to go through therapy, like for real, because Arrested Development, it was a hard thing to experience as a 22, and Ishi was probably 17, 16 years old. Like, it's a hard thing to experience that kind of level of notoriety and fame, and then have it drop so quickly with the record, and then break up all within the span of 3 or 4 years. Like, that's a lot of experience consolidated in 4 years. And so we've been through a lot. And I would say that, like, over these years, we've all like made amends to connect and vibe with one another. At certain points, like almost every member that was in the original group has been with me, because I had to keep this thing rolling for a number of reasons. One is I'm a creative dude. Like, by nature, I'm in the studio a lot. It's what I love. I told you earlier that my passion was being a musician, being a writer. So I love writing. And so that's one reason. But the second reason is it was the brand that could keep money coming in. So like, I did solo material that was killing it in Japan. But when we talked about getting back together as Arrested Development, it was a much bigger opportunity for everybody. So it was like, okay, I need to keep this thing alive. And so we toured, we did what we needed to do, and we kept the brand alive. So over the years, all of these members have been in and out of the group. As I told you, I let people come and go. And yeah, we've mended a lot of these, you know, beefs that we had. And I'm actually sort of proud of us in this sense. Like, we were 20-year-olds, and I learned later that a lot of the things we went through, whether it was jealousy, envy, greed, a lot of these just like very regular sins that happens when money gets involved. A lot of people went through that stuff. Like, I realized how common it is for groups, especially, to go through that kind of, you know, refinement or test. And we went through it too.
Wow. Man, I think that's really dope to hear, man. Because, you know, as fans, we never want to hear like, you know, the collective, you know, feuding with each other, but to hear that you guys have grown, and you know, to some point gotten over differences, that's pretty dope. I also want to talk about Baba OJ, who I believe he passed away a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, he did. 2018.
He is known as probably the oldest member of a hip hop collective, which is dope to really even think of. I don't know too much. Like, I don't hear too much about him. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to just talk about the significance, right, he had on the group, or even on you, that because he was a member that was there, but of course he didn't really rap or sing or anything. But I want to believe that he had a significance, right, a importance. So can you talk a little bit about what he meant to yourself or to the collective?
Definitely. So, like, you know, I come from an era, so I will just give you context, because in hip hop, you know, hip hop's been through numerous eras and different things motivated each era. I came up in an era where concept was very important. So, like, if you remember Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force, they would wear Indian outfits and like that was a thing that they were doing. And then when they were on stage, they were in full guard, you know what I'm saying? Like, bam. And then you got Public Enemy, for instance, who had the S1W. So this is conceptual. They had Chuck D as the main, you know, the hard rhymer, and they had Flavor as sort of like the comic relief, and they had, you know, Griff and the S1Ws as like the military outfit, and they had Harry Allen as the media assassin, and they had. So the point is that it was conceptual. It was more than just like just simply musical. And even Tribe's first record, if you remember back with the Travels record, you know, they had these like Japanese rice hats on, and like it was conceptual. You know, De La, same difference. X-Clan, very much conceptual. You know what I mean? So Arrested Development came up in that era of hip hop. And so for me, I knew that I wanted a concept that brought, and you mentioned it earlier, A-Level, a communal energy, like an energy that brought us together. That's what I wanted the visual representation to be for Arrested Development, not just one MC. Chuck D often talks about this, where he believes that people are missing the group element.
Right.
And I wanted the energy of Arrested Development to be that group element where you got women, men, which was not done a lot. You know, the last that I can recall, the last group that had men and women in it prior to us was Funky 4+1, and that was a minute ago. That was early 80s.
Very beginning, you know what I'm saying?
So believe it or not, it wasn't commonplace. Like, this is before Fuji's and all of that stuff. And so, you know, concept was important. So the elder was a symbolism, but he was also a concept of community. And I felt that was deeply important and needed. And I talk about that on the song The Forsaken on this record.
Yes.
Where I talk about why I did the things that I did and why I think that it's important. You know what I'm saying? And it was, and it did do what I hoped it would do, which was to represent things that would spark in us ancestral and communal power. Like, it would spark in the listener or the viewer of a concert a sense of, wow, this is symbolically powerful. And musically, hopefully they think it's powerful too. So Baba was that. But then at the same time, Baba OJ was also a true, like, studier of African culture. So there's this whole community called the Asar Set Society, which is people that study African culture and religion, and they're nationwide and worldwide. So he joined the Asar Set Society years ago, and everywhere we would go, we would literally have African kings and queens come backstage and greet us in African garb, African religion ceremonies, and so on and so forth, because of Baba OJ. He spent 7 years or so in Africa, different countries in Africa, studied numerous different religions and cultures and things there. So backstage with Baba is like a history lesson every day. You know what I mean? And the lifestyle of being a Black man or a person of African descent, but maneuvering with African customs instead of European or Westernized customs, was something that Baba brought to the table.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I read that one of the last shows that you guys, I think one of the shows that you guys did, like right after he had passed, it was like one of the hardest shows.
Yeah, it's in Paris.
Yeah, and I could just imagine, like, because I got a chance to see a glimpse of like a snippet of the show, and I could see like his his picture on stage.
Yeah,
I could only imagine what that felt like for you.
That was 2018. What's funny how God works is, so Baba had stopped touring with us for about, I don't know, 2 or so years because we were in Paris, France, ironically, and he fell out in the airport. And at that time, I'm going to say he was probably 83 or something like that. And he fell out, which was unusual for Baba because he was a health nut, vegan, extremely healthy, strong as an ox. I mean, Baba could do one-handed push-ups like all the way up until he got sick. And so one day in Paris, we're traveling, doing our world, and he falls out at the airport. And I stay behind and I stay with him. The rest of the group members fly back home. And long story short, he never toured with us from that point on. But I just happened to be in Milwaukee for some business, which is where he's from, by the way. And he was really sort of doing pretty bad. He had a stroke, couldn't really talk well. And I went to his house and hung out with him and his family. And then about a week or two later, I'm on tour and Baba passes. And me and my queen were able to see him just about 2 weeks, a week earlier, which was great because I live in Atlanta. I happened to be in Milwaukee and was able to connect with him. And anyway, when we got the news, we were on our way to a gig, and it just destroyed everybody, because everybody in the group, even the new members of Arrested Development, have been rocking with me for about 15, 16 years. So they all knew Baba too. And it was just, but it was one of the most moving shows. The whole entire audience, packed out show. They all, put their lighters up. His picture was in the back of us. And I think I was singing maybe Raining Revolution or one of the other tracks from the first album. And it was just one of the most memorable times. It was beautiful. We all dedicated a number of shows to Baba. And we lost him, but he is an amazing dude. And everybody that knows him, they all attest to him, just being such an amazing inspiration.
Wow. Rest in peace to Baba.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing, man. That's an amazing story right there, man. Wow. A-Level, you got another question?
If you could talk a little bit about the Everyday People podcast, that you're doing right now. You're doing this with your wife and your kids. That's an amazing thing, I believe. I can really see that you're very family, marriage, big on that, and just putting that out there. What inspired you to say, hey, I mean, your speech, you could do a podcast by yourself and just make it that way. What inspired you to put that podcast together?
Honestly, like, for me, I do better like in a group setting where I'm able to just conversate, because like I hang around my family, but I also around like regular people. I'm not one that likes to hang around a bunch of celebrities, and I definitely don't like to I'm not a heavy materialistic kind of guy, so I don't like to do things for the show of it. I don't like to really club anymore or anything like that. So I'd rather just hang out and talk and chill. And my family and I have these discussions all the time that are really just fun but deep and just great discussions. And so I wanted the podcast to feel that way, because I felt like I'm in my sort of area of genius when I'm in that atmosphere. And so I feel really good about the podcast. It's called, Speeches Everyday People Podcast. And it's just that. It's me and everyday people, my family, but also I bring guests on and we talk about a number of things. Some of it's just clowning and just having fun. And then others of it is a little bit more deep and substantive. So it's cool. I like it a lot. And we was just talking about it today because we haven't done one in a week. And we were trying to decide if we're going to do one tomorrow or not. And so we was just talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, how often do you do it? Like whether it's weekly or not, or
yeah, it's supposed to be weekly. And then when the Don't Fight Your Demons joint came out, I mean, I've been doing so much work, doing interviews like this, but also like social media work, just really working the phones in a sense, like online, going from Twitter to Facebook to, whatever, IG or whatever, just like making sure I'm answering, DMs and just working it, because it's all independent. So just really making sure I'm on top of stuff. So that's taking priority. And the record has gotten such good love that by far it's gotten more love than anything I've done since the first album. Like,
wow.
Or maybe since Zingalama Dooney, the second album. Like probably everything since then, this record has gotten more love than all of that. So it's in a zone where I don't want to miss that beautiful moment that's happening right now. I want to be right here and present for it.
I think another thing that's really dope that I actually saw a post about it the other day, that this album came out the same year that the same day that PE released their album. Paris released the album on this day as well. Yeah. There's a lot of like, classic hip hop groups and artists who are known for like conscious, thought provoking hip hop.
Yeah.
That released on the same day. And I'm like, did y'all all get together and like
Revolution?
Revolution.
Oh, brother say.
It's crazy. Like that's totally God to me, because here it is. Like me, Chuck D, and Daddy O from Stetson Sonic, we have a group that Daddy O formed us into a group called Night Train, right? So we're talking via text, me, Chuck D, and Daddy O. And when I finally decided the release date, I hit up Chuck and Daddy O, and I'm like, yo, I'm fired up. Arrested Development, we're going to release our next record. It's called Don't Fight Your Demons on September 25th. And Chuck writes back, yo, that's crazy. We're releasing and what you going to do when the grid goes down, on the exact same day. And then I found out later that Paris was also releasing. So I hit him up. And I'm like, Paris, I love his record. And,
they've released the album as well.
Happy Roots. Some of the brothers from Nubian, Brand Nubians even released. I forget. But anyway, it's like, it was totally unintended, but I feel like it's God just making it a better story so that it can keep some, get some traction in this industry. And it's working. I mean, a lot of people are celebrating the fact that these artists are coming out on the exact same day, and we didn't orchestrate that.
Wow.
Listen, man, brother, this has been amazing. Definitely one of the hallmark periods of our career here at Out the Box. This is a movement that we've been having going on for nearly 10 years now, Cril.
Yeah, but beyond 10 years.
Beyond 10 years.
2009, Out the Box TV, just doing interviews with a number of artists, man. Mainly like the independent scene artists, but also some of the more, popular names that people know of today, but it's always a pleasure to build with, brothers who've had their foot in the game for so long, and, it continue to do the work with that level of integrity that you have.
Yeah, just really trying to put out quality content, quality media for quality content. We don't really get these kind of platforms too often, and your brothers like yourself, we like to give you guys the roses, give you flowers now. And
I smell the roses.
I just want to leave you one last question. When you leave this earth, how do you want to be eulogized? Or how do you want your obituary to be read?
That's a great question, bro. And I don't know the answer to that. I do feel like something in the realms of the song Pride that I wrote with Zingalama Dooney album. Somewhere in there, like, to me, those lyrics represent what I feel like my life is. But yeah, I've given up trying to understand how exactly it'll be, perceived when I pass. You know what I'm saying? You never know. But I tell you, for me personally, somewhere in that vibe of that record, Pride, the Mary Makeba sample, and the lyrics that I'm spitting on that record, I mean, that reminds me of my heart.
Awesome, man.
Wow. That's a powerful one, A-Level. I'm like, man, I'm gonna come after that. That's a close one. But yo, I guess I just want to throw this in before we get out of here. And I thank you again, Speech, for taking this amount of time with us. We really appreciate you for that time. You have a record on the album called Young Americans, where it details this conversation between you, and it seems like it's a continental African sister.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest divide between what we call ADOS, you know, African descendants of enslaved Africans, Africans in the diaspora, and continental Africans, in terms of like what gets in the way of us being better able to communicate and support each other in this fight against systemic oppression?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that track to me is like an example of trying to understand each person's views, because a lot of people I've met that are from the continent and from the diaspora too, they see the corruption in their own country and they're like, yo, there's corruption in America, but there's also tons of opportunity and y'all are missing it, like meaning Black people, and y'all don't get it. And so if I come there, I'm going to take advantage of the stuff y'all laugh at. Like, y'all don't want to go to school. Well, we do. Y'all don't, you know, you guys think the school is European education or whatever. Well, I'll go there. I'll get this degree. Y'all say degrees don't really do nothing. I'm going to get that degree. Y'all say that, you know, there ain't no opportunities for Blacks. Watch me come there and let me do what I'm going to do. And compared to where I'm from, some of these people will say, nah, it's a lot of opportunity. So I get that a lot. And so while that song is really not about a particular woman that I talked to, it's really sort of amalgamation of a few different people over life that I've talked to. And I think that that's a lot of times the divide, where a lot of Africans who still have their culture, their original culture, whatever tribe they're from, they have that culture, they have that sort of community moral code that they live by. And their feeling is, look, go here to this country, make that money and get out and send it back to your people back home. But yeah, work that corner store or work that cleaning service or work that taxi cab, whatever you got to do, go ahead and do it, make that money, stack that money, and make the best of it. That's sort of their view. So what I'm talking about in the song, and this is what I believe in real life too, is that, well, you got to understand what we've been through here, and things like Black Wall Street, you know, from Oklahoma, just the bombings, the fires, a lot of these things have trained us that no matter what we do, we're going to just get a new form of opposition against it. So whether we own our own land and we have our own communities, which some of these things I just mentioned are examples of that, we'll still get bombed. Right in Philadelphia, near y'all, the MOVE organization had block of land. They were growing their own food. They had their own arms. In a sense, they were their own little nation. But those people were bombed in the middle of a city street in the United States.
Wow.
My point is that there is examples of oppression beyond just things that we tend to talk about, like police brutality. This was more orchestrated, where just like in the Black Wall Street situation, where an entire town with businesses and property and all of this was just flat out either burned down or stolen. And the government did nothing about it. And not only did they not do anything about it, but most people until recently didn't even know what happened, Black and white. So there is some scars that we as American descendants of slaves have that an immigrant coming here doesn't even know the history of, and pretty much may not care so deeply because they have their own problems that they're coming from, and they're coming here just to succeed. So they got this lighter feeling of like, look, I'm just coming here to get that money or that education or whatever I'm trying to get, and then I'm sending it back home, or I might make a living here. But they just have a different view. And I think we as Blacks need to not judge our African brothers and sisters so harshly because they don't understand our experience, and vice versa. They shouldn't judge us so harshly because they don't understand our unique experience of what we've experienced here in America. So that song is talking about that. And at the end of it, you know, I give these fictional characters, in a sense, I give them a chance to reconcile, even though they have different views. You know, she's down with Alegba, I'm down with Jesus. She's down with wanting to move to DC. I want to move to Ghana. You know what I mean? So it's like there's two different viewpoints. But I say it in the song, we all have a different vision of what freedom means for us. And we got to be able to respect that as a diaspora, as a total family.
Wow. You know, I think it's We'll See is one of the final tracks on the album. You have, I think in the hook you say, I remember touring with James Brown when he was too old to be on stage.
Yeah.
Said that won't be me. And then you go on to say some other things. And I really had to think about that because you guys put out this debut album, which has these big hits, these Grammy winning records. And me and A-Level talk about this a lot when we talk about Illmatic, right? Like this idea of your classic record that came out years ago just can't live up to the hype, right?
Yeah.
But you've continued to put out music. You know, you've continued to tour. You've continued to, I guess, I don't want to say reinvent yourself, but keep yourself fresh and keep the Arrested Development name out there.
Yeah.
So it speaks to something, you know, in terms of your ability to continue on. So tell me, where do you find the satisfaction as an artist, given all of that, you know, idea of like not being able to live up to new records being more popular than the first debut? Like, how do you stay satisfied and still keep motivated even to this day?
That's a great question, bro. Cause like the whole song We'll See is about that. You know, like the chorus, I remember touring with James Brown when he was too old to be on stage. And I forget it now off the top, but like, you know, is that going to be me? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I going to like continue to move forward and everybody still talk about the first album more than they want to talk about Don't Fight Your Demons, this album? Like, is it going to be my whole entire existence that I can never like sort of get under the shadow of 3 years, 5 months, 2 days in the life of? And the whole question mark is we'll see, right? And I feel like a lot of artists have to do that. Like I was talking with Michael Stipe from REM, and he was saying like, look, man, I feel sorry for y'all because your first record like blew off the roof and everybody's like expecting y'all to go from there up. And it's like, nah. He said, my group, REM, we had a bunch of whack records for a while. And then we finally got our chemistry together and started releasing major hits. And I always looked at that and I talk about it on We'll See. Like, I always felt like Arrested Development came out and we went straight to sex. It's like the first time we see each other, we going straight into sex. And we didn't have no date. We didn't have no time to talk, no foreplay, no nothing with our fan base. And because of that, it was tough to sort of go backwards. And so a lot of our records, we were trying to experiment for quite a while to figure out where is our lane, because the record was so successful that it's tough to follow that up. You know what I mean? Like, it's like Prince with Purple Rain or Michael Jackson with Thriller, or so many artists, Nas with Illmatic. It's like, I feel like the same thing. I don't know if I can't speak for him as to whether or not he's chasing it, but I will say that he's had that struggle of everybody comparing every record he's ever done to Illmatic. You know what I mean? And that's what happens with us with 3 years.
Yeah, I was telling people, man, I mean, it's going on to be beyond just a hip hop classic. It's a musical standard, especially if it's observed in colleges and Smithsonian museums and stuff that. He said it's taken a life of his own.
It has.
And for my thing, my whole spin on it is like, embrace it.
I agree.
Embrace it.
Yeah. And I'm glad for it. I mean, I'm grateful.
When you try to turn in the other direction, it looks as though, you're uncomfortable with that, discomfort shows,
Yeah. And I feel like to me, the beauty of this record, Don't Fight Your Demons, is that everything that happened to me and to the group, is able to be better expressed in this record because it happened. So like all of this vulnerability, all of this, our particular journey, our journey was different than Tribe's journey. You know what I'm saying? Like Tribe's journey was able to have, but De La's journey was very similar to ours. But like Tribe's journey, on the other hand, they had a couple records, and then it's like, oh, we got it. We got this way of we're going to approach music. And to me, Low End Theory was the beginnings of that. But, you know, it's like then they were able to sort of ride that vibe. And, you know, I feel like we're starting to catch the energy now.
I most definitely feel that on this record, man, from Becoming, you know, I heard that. I was like, wow, they really knocked this one out the park, you know, like.
Thank you.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like we got a little something now, like that feels like we can be in a vein now and have some fun with this. You know what I mean?
Indeed. Wow, Speech. You know, I thought about this today, and I just want to share with you before we get out of here. Arrested Development. When I think about what you guys did when you started out, I think about you guys were like the only group that I could think of that was able to bridge the gap with hip hop and that melodic sound and not be attached to a movement. And what I mean by that is like when you think about Tribe Called Quest, they're connected to the native tongues, right?
Very much, yeah.
You know, when you think about even like Outkast, you got the Dungeon Family, you got Goody Mob. Yeah. Like you guys came out, had the hip hop sound, connected with the melodic sound, the singing and all of that. But I realized that y'all weren't like attached to a movement. And I thought like just thinking about that, I'm like, wow, that's like pretty innovative. Like I'm almost like curious to know like what mindset got y'all to be able to just step out and just on your own just do that? That's just my last question as I'm thinking about the impact of the group, you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that question because the truth is that I think it helped me being from Milwaukee because even to this day, Milwaukee's not truly on the map for hip hop. And so I didn't expect to be accepted. You know, like I wasn't expecting it. Whereas Tribe, even with Tribe, like they came from Tribe and De La came from Jungle Brothers, really, in a sense, as far as getting on. Red Alert was their dude, Jungle Brothers dude, and Red Alert was already like very much the trendsetter for a lot of hip hop at that time. So they sort of had a conduit of how they can get onto the, you know, people's consciousness. Atlanta was not really known for hip hop. If you remember back in the early 90s, late 80s, it was not known for anything. I mean, like, as far as it had some local artists that were doing their thing in Atlanta and people knew about them in Atlanta, but world not so much. And the closest thing to Southern hip hop was probably Ghetto Boys and Luke down in Miami. That was it. And Miami was a coastal sound. It was a totally different sound. And that was it. And so West Coast was really, you guys in New York and in California was really pretty much what hip hop was. And so for us, we really didn't even have the choice to ride with a crew. We didn't have there was no crews doing this like on a big level. LaFace wasn't down here yet. They would end up coming down, which is what Outkast and Dungeon Family would end up signing to. Right. Dungeon Family wasn't out yet. Outkast, Goody Mob, none of them was out yet. So for Arrested Development, to me, I felt like we were having to carry Atlanta on our shoulders as a group. I mean, look, maybe some Atlanta artists could tell me who was out at that time that was making the type of numbers and impact that we was, but maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but I don't remember that because we were right here. So I just remember us carrying it, and Chris Cross was doing it too. Like Chris Cross was way bigger than us. I mean, they were like a kid sensation, like the Beatles, basically hip hop Beatles at the time, you know? So it was us too. And they weren't representing the South necessarily, you know, like they were from here, but our whole image, we put everything, like we put all our chips on the table and said we riding for the South. This is where we come from. So everything from the rural South imagery you see in Tennessee, or People Every Day, or even Mr. Window, all of that was what we rode on. Whereas Crisscross didn't ride on that. They just had a sort of a generic white background type of look to their stuff, and just the backwards jeans and the whole dress code type of thing. But they weren't repping like, you know, look at where we are based in. You know what I mean? It wasn't that type of thing that I can remember, at least. And I don't know anybody that was doing that. So for us, we was the guinea pigs in a sense, like sort of just going out there and doing it. And yeah, so
wow,
we didn't have that. We didn't have a choice.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that speech. Man, we so appreciate you taking the time once again, man. I'm going to look for more, you know, that's going to come out, not only with this record. I'm sure there's more videos, you know, on the way. Any last things you want to say to the people out there in terms of the record, or in terms of the other stuff you have going on?
Well, two things. Check out Don't Fight Your Demons, a classic Arrested Development record. I think people can really latch on to this and enjoy what we're doing. And then it's on Bandcamp. It's on our site. We'd rather you pay for it. You know, nowadays, especially, we're not touring. We're not doing anything. So if you got the money to do it, please, you know, put down a couple bucks, pay for the record. It'd be beautiful for us. And then I'd say check out my film 16 Bars, because I go into a jail for 10 days and I write music with inmates, and it's one of the most powerful things I've ever done for me personally. And then also the people that seen the film, they say that. So I would tell people, you can get it on YouTube right now. You can go on YouTube and peep out, just type in 16 Bars the film, and you got it. So yeah, check both projects, Don't Fight Your Demons and 16 Bars.
Brother, you know, want to shout you, man, salute you. You always have a home here without the box. Consider us family, you know, now and forever, man. So definitely myself, man, I will be praying for you, your family, and everything you touch, brother.
Indeed.
Appreciate it.
Yes, brother.
Appreciate it, man. Same here, y'all. Appreciate y'all's love, man. And the vibe was good. We talked almost 2 hours. So we had a conversation.
Indeed. Yeah, man. So I definitely want to shout out to all the people that were tuning in today. We had a lot of people kind of like commenting. So thank you to each and every one of you, man, for, you know, commenting and just rocking with us for the night. The interview will be up. Usually I'll do these interviews and we'll just make it private and then relaunch it on Friday, but I'm gonna leave this one up. So if you didn't catch the interview, you know, if you caught it on the tail end or you came in earlier, you know, this interview will be up. The full interview will be up for you to check out on Out the Box TV, YouTube. Remember to check for our podcast, which is on a lot of the different podcast networks, wherever you can find podcasts like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We release a new audio podcast every Friday. This will also be available as an audio podcast. We're going to put up the audio. And again, Speech, man, thank you so much. I am definitely going to be, you know, listening to this record much more. Yeah. I'm a lyric head, so I'm going to be digging in. And I've already done a number of it, but I'm going to be still digging in, man. And
I think this is the best lyrical effort I've ever heard, you know, from Speech thus far, man.
I appreciate that. That
means
a lot.
He goes in on this.
Yeah, man. Indeed. There's so much on here. Like you said, there's stuff you're uncovering personally. But what I love about the record is that it has so many different sounds to it, you know, but one thing that's consistent is the soul. Like the soul exists on every track, but you hear a lot of like how you say, like early hip hop, like you have like those breaks and stuff that you hear. Yeah. And I don't know if that's Configure and you guys just coming together, but like this is a hip hop record.
Yeah, and it's me on the turntables too. So remember, I said I started off as a DJ. I'm scratching on the song "Amazing," for instance. I'm scratching all over that bad boy.
That's what it is. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, man. So, family, thank you again for tuning in. And we will catch you on the next show. Me and A-Level, we got another show coming up. We planning for it Saturday. We got an album review show for that we're planning on that I won't talk about yet, but you know, folks should check out for that, man. But thank you again, Speech. Much success, peace, love, and life. Stay healthy, you know, stay safe, man. And you know, much thanks again, bro.
Appreciate
it. You know how we normally end the show, man. You know, Speech could relate to this. Hey, yo, what happened to peace? Peace.